Hello, my name is William and I'm a historian, and we're going to do a little series about the Roman emperors. We're going to start by Hadrian. Now Hadrian, his reign is supposed to be a golden era, but the sources suggest otherwise. He was born in 117. He succeeded Trajan, one of the finest emperors of Rome, the soldier emperor. Now, Hadrian began his reign by executing one of the finest Greek architects of all time, Apollobos of Damascus. No one knows why, but he forced him to commit suicide. They had some argument about the Temple of Venus. And it was a shame, really, because Apollobos, he created some of the greatest masterpieces. For example, Trajans Forum, that can be seen in the Forum of Rome today. Now, in the following year, 118, the Berbers rebelled when Hadrian discarded Lucius Quietus. Now, Lucius Quietus was a Berber commander. He was a Romanized Berber. And the Berbers were quite attached to Lucius Quietus, and when he discarded him for some reason, the Berbers rebelled. And the Berbers were defeated by Commander Marcus Turbo, and we don't know much about that campaign. The following year, 119, Marcus Turbo removed his troops from Mauritania, northern Africa, and they defeated the Roxolani Scythians, probably somewhere around modern Bulgaria or southern Romania. And we don't know much about that campaign either. And it was during that campaign against the Scythians that Hadrian founded Hadrianopolis, which is modern Adina in Turkey. And sadly, not much of that Roman colony is left. The city's full of Turkish mosques, Muslim mosques. Now in that same year, 4 senators, Hadrianus, Palma, Gelsus, and Lucius Quietus, the Berber commander, plotted to overthrow Hadrian, who actually wants to murder him. Hadrian was tipped off, and he arrested and he executed them. Now, for some reason, the senators did not forgive Hadrian for what he did. Hadrian he had a great excuse about executing the 4 senators. But for some reason, the senators would not forgive him for that, even after his death. Perhaps in the same year, Hadrian abandoned Trajan's dream. Now, just before his death, Trajan had conquered most of the Parthian Empire. I mean, he captured all of Assyria and parts of Arabia. Now, Trajan abandoned all of that. And it was a shame, really. He abandoned everything around the Euphrates. Now, Trajan, a few years earlier, he created the greatest extent of the Roman Empire. And Hadrian abandoned that. He probably thought about the cost of keeping garrisons and the rebellions of the Parthians. Now, 180, Hadrian created a colony called Hadrian, because he was hunting one day. In 122, the British rebelled, and we don't know much about that either. In 123, there was a minor revolt in Spain. Actually, the troops rebelled for some reason, probably because of lack of pay, and someone tried to murder Hadrian in the city of Tarragona, and we don't know why or who now. Now, in 130 AD, Hadrian's boyfriend died. Now, how he died is quite funny, actually. They were in Egypt at the time, and some priests they went up to the young boy, the Greek boy in Vinos, and they they said that they said that you were like 18, you're an 18-year-old boy, and if you die, then you will add 18 years to Hadrian, who was probably about 50 at the time. And the young boy drowned himself, and he died. And Hadrian was so sad about that. He was a broken man, and he ordered his boyfriend to be deified, and he built a city in his name, Adinopolis. And Christian fathers talk about that with shame. Now, probably in the same year, Hadrian quarrelled with one of the great Gallo-Roman philosophers, Valerianus, and he ordered that his statue would be overthrown. So we see Hadrian quarrelling with a second philosopher. The first was Apollonius. And soon after that, probably in 131, the Jews rebelled once more. They had rebelled a few years earlier during the reign of Trajan. Now this would be the last rebellion the Jews would do. It would last for like 4 years. The leader of this rebellion was Simon bar Kohba. The spiritual leader was Rabbi Akiva. And sadly we don't know much about this rebellion. It would last for about 4 years, 131 to 135. And the Roman commander Julius Severus, the commander of the British legions, and proconsul Rufus would ruthlessly put down the rebellion. Thousands of Jews would be killed. It is said that the Romans captured 50 Jewish forts and cities. They would ransack 85 villages, and they massacred 580,000 men. That's over 500,000 people. Now perhaps the figures are swollen up, but nevertheless the Romans did a true massacre. The city of Bethel was sacked in the West Bank. Jerusalem was also captured and sacked. The Romans suffered heavy casualties themselves. The city was renamed into Aelia Capitolina, from Aelius, Hadrian's surname, and the Jews were not permitted to enter the city at all. And in the year 135, the Jews would become a people of the diaspora for like 900 years. That's nearly 2 millennia. That's too long. And Hadrian also discovered the name of Palestine. He discovered one of the arch enemies of the Jews, an old people that were long extinct, the Palestinians, and he called the area Palestine. And that's how the name came up for the first time, Syria, Palestine. Now the only Jews who were permitted to live in the area were the Sarmatians, and they still lived around the area of Flavian Neapolis, Shechem, Samaria, the city of Samaria, Mount Gerizim, the Holy Mountain, and a few other forts around that area. Now, in 132, Hadrian forced the governor of Syria, Marcellus, to commit suicide. We don't know why, we don't know how. 134, a group of Alans, Scythian tribesmen, Germanic Scythian tribesmen, they raided Armenia and Cappadocia. And guess who defeated them? Flavius Arrian. Flavius Arrian was the famous historian who wrote about Alexander. He wrote a great story about Alexander's analysis. He wrote the Indica and lots of other books. In 137, the Empress Sabina, Hadrian's wife, committed suicide. The reason why she committed suicide was that Hadrian was a gay man and she felt neglected. She felt melancholy and she took her own life. Perhaps Hadrian was not to blame, but he was partly to blame. In 138, Hadrian appointed Aelius Verus as Caesar, but the man died of an ailment. Hadrian, who had no offspring of his own, appointed Lucius Verus, the father of the later Emperor Lucius Verus, but he too died of an ailment. And so, Hadrian was forced to adopt Antoninus Pius, and who was in turn forced in the wheel to adopt Marcus Aurelius and Lucius Verus, son of Lucius Verus, as his heirs. And thus, the Antonine dynasty would be founded a few years later when Hadrian himself died. A certain Servianus planned to become emperor. Hadrian later rejected the man and he executed him, which was quite cruel. Now, during this battle for succession, I mean, everyone knew that Hadrian was an old man, he was ready to die. A certain Fuscus conspired against Hadrian, and he was arrested and executed. Soon afterwards, Hadrian died, aged 62, after a nearly 22-year reign. Hadrian, just before his death, Hadrian had arrested a couple of nobles, senators perhaps, and he planned to execute them. Hadrian died, and his heir, Antoninus Pius, knew this decision, and he ordered the Senate to release these people. And Antoninus Pius was called Pius because of his execution, because of that decision he made. And Antoninus Pius ordered the Senate to deify Hadrian. Now the senators, they wanted to punish Hadrian, but not by not deifying him. When he executed the 4 senators in 119, but it was Antoninus Pius who arranged for all that. And so Hadrian was deified after his death, after his 22-year reign. Now Hadrian, he did something terrible also. He left a beard because of his scars. Now the Romans used to shave themselves during the Republic, the great part of the Republic, and the early Empire. And he left a beard, and then most of the emperors, up until the age of Diocletian, the late 3rd century, they would be bearded, which completely ruined the face of the Roman Empire. Now we see wars with Berbers, with British, with the Scythians, with Alans, with Jews, with the Spaniards. We see certain members of the aristocracy being executed, being arrested. So Hadrian's reign was perhaps not that golden after all. Of course, Hadrian produced lots of artificers. He commissioned lots of artificers. I mean, many cities around the empire received amazing buildings. For example, he had a big villa in Tibur, modern Tivoli, where we see gardens, we see theatres, we see crocodiles. In Athens, he built a large library. He completed the Temple of Zeus. He built an arch. Aqueducts, we see them everywhere, in Spain, in Gaul, in northern Africa. So it was a golden age for artificers, for amazing temples and theatres and buildings. There were lots of historians. Hadrian created the second sophistic. He gathered lots of Greeks, a few Gauls, a few Romans. There was not only Greeks who were involved in the second sophistic. And he too started himself as a philosopher emperor, something that Marcus Aurelius would do later on. And so in a way, his reign was a relatively peaceful one, and it was a lot of philosophy and lots of artifice being built. But on the other hand, we see wars, we see treachery, we see ruthlessness, we see homosexuality. So Hadrian was considered by the historian Augusta to be a tyrant, and other sources are quite hostile to him. So Hadrian was a peculiar man, he was a peculiar emperor, and the sources are quite contradicting to each other. But in all, Hadrian was one of the finest emperors Rome ever had.